Hi everyone, welcome to NICU and After, a channel where we talk about life during and after the NICU. So today's video, we're going to talk about the type of nurses that I loved while we were in the NICU, the nurses who made our time special and easy. So last video, I talked about the different type of nurses that I hated while we were in the NICU. So I will make sure that I attach that video to the end of this video so you can kind of see like the polar opposite of each type of nurse that made our time in the NICU. So let's just get into it. So the first type of nurse that I loved while we were in the NICU was an encouraging nurse. And I'm not talking about the nurse that encouraged you and like said stuff like, good job mom, you're doing great. Having a nurse, I'm talking about the type of nurse who encouraged us to actually take some time away from the NICU. The nurses who encouraged me to, mom, go get a cup of coffee, go grab some lunch. And I'm not talking about grab lunch and coffee inside the hospital. They encouraged me to get outside of the NICU walls. And that's really hard to do sometimes. You don't want to leave your child. However, leaving the NICU is healthy. To leave out of the NICU didn't make me feel bad to leave the NICU. It is very easy to feel guilty if you spend time away from the NICU, but having a nurse encouraged me to spend some time outside of the walls were the type of nurses that I loved while I was in the NICU. The second type of nurse that I loved when we were in the NICU was a nurse who loved arts and crafts. Now, you might say, huh? But one of the things that a lot of the nurses would do will do a lot of footprint art. And they would take that footprint art or handprint art and decorate the room. And it kind of made you feel like, one, you are capturing all the different type of milestones. And it also just made you feel like your child wasn't in a hospital. Your child was in a, let's say, a long-term daycare center, an overnight daycare center. It just kind of made it feel more special, more homey. And those type of nurses will come in and have the most creative footprint ideas. Every holiday, they make you some type of art. I remember one of my favorite ones was when we were in day 100 and I came in and they literally had the number 1 and her 2 footprints as like the 0 to kind of represent day 100. But I love that. It just, even though I was like, wow, we've been here for 100 days, I just love that they were spending time with her, not just only giving her medicines or just changing her diapers and feeding her. They actually were, spending time with her in a different way, in a different capacity than just taking care of her in the hospital. And I love that. It made me feel warm inside. I love coming in, looking at all of her artwork, and her room just became warmer and warmer over the time. It wasn't this cold, sterile hospital room. So I love that. The third type of nurse that I loved when we were in the NICU, a nurse who encouraged kangaroo time, a nurse who wanted me to hold my child. You'll be surprised, there are a lot of nurses who, I wouldn't say that they don't want you to do kangaroo time, but they're not like actively pushing for it. And I say that to say kangaroo time can be really difficult to do, especially if you have a baby in the NICU that's hooked up to a lot of cords and wires and monitor. So every time you take them out of their crib or their incubator, it can be a daunting task. It's not an easy just pick your baby up and hold your baby. Sometimes it can take 3 to 4 nurses to hold your baby. And sometimes you can feel like as a parent you are, asking them to do too much. And which you're not, because you're supposed to be able to hold your baby whenever you want to. However, because we know that task can be a daunting task that can take 3 or 4 nurses to kind of help do it, you don't want to do it unless they like encourage her, but like, hey mom, you want to do kangaroo time? You're like, oh yeah, of course, So, but having a nurse who pushed having that kangaroo time, who didn't care if they took an extra 15-20 minutes to get you set up to hold your baby, those type of nurses I love. They make me feel warm. They make me feel like I was not just another mom with their child in the hospital. They made me feel like we were a village, that we were a team, and I love that. Having a nurse that come in during her shift and say, oh my God, I remember Bailey. I love Bailey. She does X, Y, and Z. She's so cute when she does this, when she drinks her bottle. A nurse who remembers your child makes you feel like they're not there to just clock in for their shift, that they actually are taking the time to know your baby. Now, it really kind of depends on how long your NICU stay is, if you're going to have repeating nurses. Sometimes, you know, we saw nurses maybe once or twice our whole entire time and never saw them again. But after a while, we were there for a really long time, so we were able to kind of rotate a lot of the nurses. So we were able to experience nurses who have had multiple times with Bailey. So it made me feel good when she had a nurse that remembered her and knew a little bit about her. And so anytime we had a nurse that actually had experience with Bailey, those were the days that I actually will take a little extra lunch break. Or those were the days that I was like, you know what, I can drink my coffee outside or to walk around the building. I don't need to be in there, you know, watching over her 24/7. I have a nurse who knows her. I feel comfortable today. So having a nurse that remembered my daughter from a previous shift, or one of the type of nurses that I loved having there, it made the time much more relaxed and comfortable that particular day. So the fifth type of nurse I loved during our time in the NICU were the nurses who love explaining the details. Now, I did mention in my last video about the type of nurses that I hated were the nurses who gave too much detail, like over-explain stuff. But what I meant by the nurses who love to give us the detail were the nurses who took their time and slowly explained things by not oversharing or giving too much detail, but the nurses who slow down to explain this to mom and dad. Sometimes, and I talked about this in the last video, sometimes during morning rounds, you know, we are moving. There's so many different people. There's so many different inputs that it can be really overwhelming. But having a nurse after morning rounds and come in and say, all right, mom and dad, I know we discussed what the plan's going to be for today, but do you have any questions? Do you need me to re-explain this for you? Do you need me to print out some paperwork on what we're going to do today? Or, hey, do you need me to explain to you the benefits to this medicine? Or do you need me to explain how x-rays are going to go today? Those type of nurses made me feel good. They made me feel like, hey, no question was dumb in the NICU. They didn't mind going a little above and beyond their job. They didn't overshare and gave us all the worst scenarios. However, they did take their time to explain things to us, and I love that. Okay, so thank you guys for watching today's video about the different type of nurses that we loved while we were in the NICU. I have also attached the polar opposite video, the type of nurses that we hated while we were in the NICU, so you kind of get the overall picture of what makes a really good NICU nurse and what makes a really bad NICU nurse. I cannot wait to share more of our journey with you guys. So I hope you do subscribe and we can kind of build this community around being a NICU mom, or just a mom in general, or just to kind of get a little bit more information about being a mother to a child who was born early and unexpectedly. So I will talk to you guys later.